Hi there and welcome to Elevator Pitch Economics. In this video we're going to cover obesity and in particular the health economics theory behind obesity. To do this we're going to use a paper which goes through the neoclassical theory of obesity, and it's from Philipson and Posner, and it's a paper from 1999. Now a bit of background before we go into the modelling itself. Obesity is a huge burden. On the UK economy, it costs more than armed violence, war and terrorism. One estimate puts the cost of obesity at £47 billion per year. Now, in 2014, 28.1% of UK adults were classified as obese, and this is a trend which has risen not just in the UK, but across developed countries. So as you can see here, these are obesity rates for a select number of developed countries, and as you can note, obesity is rising quite rapidly across all of them. Now, why does the rise in obesity matter? Well, there are a range of costly diseases which are linked to obesity. Diabetes, heart disease, bowel cancer, and stroke are some, just to name a few. And all of these have a negative impact. They have a negative impact on levels of productivity, which is costly for business, but it also has a cost impact for the health services. Now, there are two main theories of obesity in health economics. In fact, if you go through all the health economics papers on obesity, you'll notice that there are lots of different ways they think through and theorize obesity. But these theories can basically be broken down into two types. They're either a neoclassical model or they're a behavioral model. Now we'll go through the behavioral models in a future paper, but in today's video we're going to focus on the neoclassical type of model. Now within the neoclassical model we begin with a set of parameters, and these are utility, weight, consumed calories, the consumption of other goods which aren't food, so anything like bikes, computers, consumer goods, etc., exercise, and the price of food. Now you also have a utility function, and this basically says that every single person has a utility, and that utility is made up of their weight, their calories, and their consumption of other goods. So these are the only three things that can change someone's utility. These are the only three things which can change someone's happiness. Now at the same time, everybody has their ideal weight, which is notified by W0, and everybody would be at this ideal weight if it were costless and if food gave us no direct utility. Now that's not something to worry about at this stage of the video, as it's something we'll cover later. Now the modelling itself begins with the assumption that physical activity, exercise, is fixed. And then it says that everybody maximises their utility subject to their budget constraint, which is the function on screen here. Now it looks complex, but all it's saying is that every individual maxes their utility, and utility is a function of their weight, their food, and their consumption of other goods. These are the only three variables which can affect someone's utility. These are the only three variables which can affect someone's happiness. Now they're going to maximise their utility or their happiness, but it has to be subject to their income. And their income must be equal to the consumption of other goods plus the price of food multiplied by the amount of food they eat. Now, if you do a lot of complex maths and you substitute this equation on the right into this one on the left, you get a first order condition which looks like this. It looks very complex again, but all it's basically saying is your last pound spent on food, it gives you the same utility as spending it on any other good. So the money you spend on food must be equal to the opportunity cost of food. Now one thing to note with the equation on the left hand side here is it basically says that food enters utility directly and indirectly. It enters directly because you have this function UF, and that is the direct utility you get from eating food, and it enters indirectly on this side here, WF. Now note, with weight, because this is the utility associated with weight, food enters indirectly because food determines your weight, and therefore it determines your utility associated with your weight. And what this equation is basically trying to say is that every individual will maximize their utility, and they will choose consumption of food and consumption of other goods in a way which does so. Now we start with the utility associated with weight, and basically this is the part of the equation which is on the left hand side here, not taking into account the direct utility of food yet. Basically, with the utility of weight, what it says is that every individual has a utility of weight which is shaped like an inverted U, and everybody has an ideal weight notified as W0, which is their ideal weight. It's the ideal weight which gives them the maximum utility of weight. And WO is also a healthy weight. If the individual had a weight which was less than W0, in order to increase their utility associated with their weight, they would need to increase their weight, as on here, the left-hand side of the curve. If the individual had a weight which is greater than W0, then in order to increase their utility associated with their weight, they would need to decrease their weight, as in here on the right-hand side of the curve. And this leads us to the main inference from the neoclassical model, and that is it's completely rational to be over your ideal weight. For example, if, as I said before, food gives us no direct utility, where we would be is here, F0, and this corresponds to weight W0. But because food does give us direct utility, we are instead here at F star, which corresponds to a weight which is above W0. Now what happens if the price of food falls? Well, the individual still maximizes their utility, and the individual still chooses consumption of food and consumption of other goods in a way which does maximize their utility, but now the price of food has fallen, while the consumption of other goods will decrease, and instead they'll eat more food, and as a result, weight will increase. That's basically what we have here. Consumption of other goods falls, consumption of food increases, and that leads to an increase in weight. And this is what it looks like on the graph. So here again you have your utility, it's subject to the opportunity cost, but now the price of food has fallen, the opportunity cost shifts to the right, and what we do is we increase the amount of food that we eat. And this leads us to our next question. What do you think happens in the modelling with increases in employment? What happens with changes in technology? These are things that we'll answer in a future video alongside going over the behavioural model and alongside going over some evidence. If you found this video useful, please give it a like and feel free to subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, and of course if there's anything else you'd like me to cover, do let me know.